Hey Gerald, we're on.
Indeed, we are.
What would you like to talk about?
Let's talk about analog versus digital.
I did not see this coming. Okay, let's go.
Do you have you ever worked with analog?
Yeah, I have.
hmm How much?
Not much. Like mostly through projects in and out of uni during university times and a bit outside of that, but not much.
So, what's your opinion of analog?
My opinion is a very rational one. It's like I know the difference between the technologies. So
hmm
this is my stance on it. Okay, so first of all, we need to make a distinction between fidelity and quality. Okay, so fidelity is just what it can capture and how clean it, the difference between input and output, right? So fidelity
Layman's terms,
in
huh?
layman's terms is if I if I send a signal in, um, if I send a signal in, what's going to be the distortion? What's going to be the difference between that and what comes out? Right? So
hmm
if I send a signal into I don't know, like a cassette, if I burn something to cassette, the output of that is going to have cassette artifacts on it, right? That's the
Indeed.
difference. It's going to have noise and limited bandwidth and all sorts of rubbish. Um, Fidelity wise, things like signal to noise ratio, frequency response, dynamic range, which is basically the same as signal to noise in at least in analog. Today's digital is superior to the vast majority, at least, of analog. And I only say the vast majority just in case there is a piece of analog gear that can capture like more than the best digital can get, the best that digital can hold and capture in terms of frequency, response, and dynamic range. Like, because even I'm not gonna try and get into too much technical detail, but anyway, that's the fidelity. The fidelity of a 24-bit WAV file, even just a 44.1 kilohertz one, is up to 20 kilohertz. Uh, well, more than that, up to 20 kilohertz capture in terms of frequency without distortion, completely linear, and 144 decibels of dynamic range from full scale all the way down. Analog is, I mean, the thing is, they're two different domains, and it's not always fair to compare the two, because.
Well, it doesn't matter what's fair. That's what we're doing right now.
Okay, cool.
hmm
I mean, so that's my fidelity argument about it. There's not a lot of analog that's as good as even the most basic the stuff that we consider basic in digital today.
Okay, that's what your head says. But what does your ear say?
My ears, what my ears say. So this is quality. So we did fidelity. Now we're talking about quality, the subjective thing, the
hmm
stuff that we hear.
hmm
My ears say it's. My ears say that it's there. I won't believe my ears unless in terms of making an objective comparison between two pieces of technology without me knowing that a fair, and I've said the word again, but a fair scientific test has been conducted, because I know too much about how fragile our perception is to form an opinion rationally, and maybe I'm being too rational about it, about the it's like oh, when I mix stuff in the DAW it sounds like this, but when I record a guitar into analog gear in a different room, it sounds like this. Yeah, but everything's different in those examples.
Yes, they are.
You know, that I'm way too aware of how many a ridiculous amount of variables there are in the outside world, in the environment in which all of this stuff is happening, but also starting from here and into our brain. So I will never ever say this sounds like that or this sounds like that, unless I know, and this is actually very difficult to do, right? Unless I know a fully, completely fair, blind, double-blind test has been conducted. And even then, I would be like, well, it's subjective. You know, well, it's relative to the material. Well, it's not statistically significant. Well, it's this, well, it's that. You know, I don't, in many ways, I don't give a shit. And I don't feel, but what I do feel rationally is that digital, and you know, I'm a child of digital. However, I know in my rational brain that there's nothing that, in my opinion, based on facts, that there's nothing that we can hear that digital can't capture and reproduce. There's just no rational reason that it wouldn't be the case, you know?
You see, I'm not one of these people who says that, oh, vinyl's way better. I mean, the tones are warm. I mean, I just see them as two different animals.
Yeah,
one's a zebra and one's a cheetah, you know, and you can't compare those two. Yeah. You know, and I remember the first digitally recorded album that I heard. It was Ry Cooder's "Bop Till You Drop." No, there's no question. When I heard that album, I said to somebody, "Who produced this album? It really sounds great. I mean, the clarity, you know." And my friend said, "Oh, it was recorded digitally." And then I think the next album that I heard was Gino Vanelli's "Brother to Brother," and you know, it just grabbed me. You know how incredibly different the tonality was. And I'm not saying it's better or it's worse. You know, I'm just saying from my standpoint. And that was the mid '70s, I guess. So, or no, maybe '77 or something like that. But I mean, digital recording was out of everybody's affordability. And
funny that.
Yeah, I mean, it was absurd how expensive it was. You would quadruple the cost of your recording just by doing it digitally back then. And it was done on digital tape. So,
yeah.
I've lost the argument about digital versus analog. The only thing the way that I look at digital now is the way it changed my life, the way it changed the way I approach music, the way I approach writing songs.
Yeah.
You know, I have this almost anything is possible approach to songwriting now that you couldn't do with analog. I mean, first of all, your pre-production had to be about what you were going to do with 24 tracks.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's like feeding kids in an orphanage. You know, you had to decide how much porridge each one was going to get.
Yeah.
And if you had to bounce tracks down, then, you know, you lost a lot of quality in your sound.
You know, you make a really good point, and the point that you've just made, that's all I care about. Like, I don't care. Like, I think it's dumb to, like, in my opinion, to just, it's like, you know, oh, I think analog's better. Great, use it. Like, oh, but I can't afford it. Well, there you go. Like, you know, like, or it doesn't, or I can't record as many tracks as I want to. Well, there you go. Like, you know, the universe makes a decision for you. So what's the argument? Like, do you know what I mean?
I couldn't even tell you right now of a studio where I could go and use 2-inch analog tape.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know any studio that would do it. I mean, I don't even, some of them perhaps still have their machines, but, first of all, you'd be hard pressed to find the tape because not many people are making it anymore. And you'd be hard pressed to find a studio that could be able to accommodate you.
Yeah.
They'd probably, it's switched around now. It would cost you much more to record something in analog.
And do you know what, man? It's not like a piece of analog gear or a piece of digital gear by themselves, they have zero value. It's the stuff that you put in it and get out of it that matters.
That is so true. I was on a saxophone blog the other day, and these guys, it's this eternal discussion. Which saxophone do you really like the best? And there is some subjective stuff in that, but it's like, I left a message. I said, what difference does it make? It's not the sax, it's the person on the end of the saxophone.
Exactly.
I know guys who, this whole mantra about, the Selmer Mark VI, it's like everybody has to have one. I've got one sitting in my closet for 50 years. I've hardly touched it. I know guys who play with student saxophones, and they play great sound, great harmonics. Sounds that you think only a $5,000 saxophone gets. It's not digital or analog. It's not the saxophone. It's who's on the end of it.
Yeah. It's the performance. It's the music. It's
It's where the creative process starts.
Yeah.
Now, what got me on this was the article that I posted the other day, and it's about what do you bring to the plate all the time? What do you bring to the parade?
Right.
That seems to have little value nowadays.
Could you elaborate on that?
Well, it was the article on Quincy Jones.
Yes.
And he said a lot of things in there that probably today's modern day musician wouldn't get or understand. He was talking about the 12th tone that a lot of Ornette Coleman and a lot of other people were using. And, I think for a lot of young people, it's probably useless information. They don't even know what he's talking about. But you know what? That changed approach of music for a lot of people. A lot of people use that 12th tone and they don't even know it, But I think, it's what he's talking about is, what are people bringing with them? What are you bringing to the party? What are you adding to this project? Yeah. Are you just talking? Or are you playing? And he's not a little. He's very old school. He's a lot like I am. And I mean, anybody can say to me, "Oh, I'm a musician." It's easy to say that. It's easy to say.
Yeah.
I'm an engineer. Oh, I master music. But it's not until you actually do it.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like, because it's easy to talk about gear, Gerald. That's why people do it, It's just easy and it's cheap. It's cheap to talk about, And the version of this that I see day in day out is plugins.
Yeah,
endless plugins, and I'm sitting here thinking, cool, great, but now what?
I used to be like that too.
Oh, dude,
I'd have to have that.
Dude, that was me, dude. That was totally me. And then, but like, I kind of pride myself on knowing audio in a very deep way. I know what you can and can't do to audio, and I know the limitations of our hearing and our subjective nature and stuff like that. And I'm sitting here thinking, there's not a lot we can actually do to a single waveform. Like when I actually really think about it, I'm like, well, actually, it's just, every waveform is just a function of amplitude over time, blah, 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 and there's only...
Technically, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, but at the end of the day, I can't remember where I was going with that, but yeah, I mean, it's like, well, cool, but an EQ is an EQ and a compressor is a compressor, and they're not like, it's like they're things of attachment now, and they're things of, for me, these things don't have any more value than a hammer does. Carpenters don't endlessly talk about their tools or romanticize their tools. They just get shit done.
Yeah, exactly.
Does it work? Yeah. Or do you know what Casey Neistat said in one of his vlogs when I was watching it recently? I was binging him again recently. And he goes, the best camera is the one you've got on you.
That is so true. That's what I was just trying to say about saxophones.
Yeah. It's because at the end of the day, it's the content, the subject, the music that matters. Whatever tool you have on you to facilitate that thing now, do it. That's it. Nothing else matters.
There was one part in that Quincy Jones article when he was talking about recording with the Beatles, and Ringo wasn't getting just this 4-bar phrase, Ringo is a nice guy, but he always says that he's the world's best rock drummer, and that's a pretty bold statement. And he couldn't get this 4-bar phrase, and it happens to a lot of people that you just don't hook up with something. And so Quincy, after 4 hours, Quincy sent him out of the studio, said, "Go and take a walk, we'll figure something out." And he brought in a studio cat who got it done in 15 minutes. And when Ringo came back to do it again, he said, "Well, but it sounds okay." And he goes, "Yeah, that's because it's not you, motherfucker. I brought somebody in who knew how to do it, And I guess that for me is the point of that whole article,
Yeah. I mean, I've said to people before, especially when I've said this to people when they've needed to hear it, and it's the plugins aren't the variable, you are.
Mm-hmm.
Logic Pro or Pro Tools or whatever, those aren't variables. You and your ears and your experience and how much work you've put in, that's the variable. Like I talk to people who think that a mix template is gonna solve their problems, and it's like, and I see that quite a lot, it just is. And I'm like, a template is just a tool to eliminate repetitive menial tasks. You've still got to mix the thing.
Still got to use your ears. If you don't have any ears, it doesn't matter how many
exactly.
templates you have. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I mean, these are such important factors in the creative process. And I'm talking about from the time you start the song to laying down lyrics and putting chord progressions together, getting it in the studio, laying it out, getting it in a form where you can look at it and see, sometimes visually it's better for you to see it that way so that it's easier to block things together. It's called developing a work process and a workflow. And everybody's different, and just because you build a mixed template isn't going to make your song any better.
No, it's not. Exactly. You're right.
It's only gonna make your work process a little easier for you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I value. Yeah, exactly. I mean, all of these things have value in when you know what you're doing and you know why they have value. Like, I have a mastering template, right? But it's but when I say that to people, they think I load up the template, import the file, and then print.
And bingo, yeah.
It's not, it's only there so I don't have to load the same 5 meter plugins every single time. It's less clicks. It's I'm probably going to use a chain similar to this. So I'm just buying myself back time, because For me, it makes business sense to do that, because why should I repeat these menial tasks that I do every single time? That's why I have a template. But the expectation that people have, and there are factors to blame in this, but the expectation people have is that that's what solves the problem. No, it's like it's the person using it that solves the problem. Those things just, you know, like things like going back to like analog and digital, in terms of workflow, like if your workflow is better on analog, do that, but don't even get it twisted about sound quality, because that's not even important right now. You've got an idea, you need to execute it as quickly as possible.
Yeah. You know. Listen, I was listening to a song that I did today. I did back more than 20 years ago. And it was an analog, and it kind of hurt my ears a little bit, but you know, I said to myself, yeah, but it's still it's a really one of my favorite songs. You know, it just, you know, because of the whole process I went through to make that song.
Yeah.
You know?
I actually have these discussions in the context of loudness. I was having a conversation in the Unlock Your Sound group about this the other day, and someone was like, oh, should I try and make it as loud as everything else? I was like, first of all, there's no such thing as loud as everything else, because no one's regulating that, you know. But also that, and I said, what did I say? I said, look, managing the volume control on the device that we're listening to music is part of the experience of listening to music. Like, I was never aware of the loudness wars until I started becoming an audio person. But when I was a kid listening to CDs, I was changing the volume between CDs without thinking this is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It never crossed my mind that that was a problem, because I just turn it up or down. What's the problem? You know? And,
you know, and that's very true. You know, I remember some years ago, this friend of mine he had a restaurant, and he was playing music on his iTouch, you know, and he said, "Well, I have to go between all the songs on each album and turn them up or turn them down." I said, that's a mastering problem.
Yeah, sure.
You know, your iTunes isn't going to fix that. It's the guy who mastered that album.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, did that. In terms of an album, you know, that's you know, there should be a flow to that. But when it comes to me as a listener listening to different CD, like, do you know what I hear all of the time? Actually, it's like, this is the last point I'll make on loudness, because otherwise this whole thing will be about it. Is oh yeah, some people go, oh, you need it loud for CD. I was like, but the CD, they're like, oh, so that every CD's. I was like, but the CD medium, by definition, like the process of going from one CD to another is already disrupted. You have to take it out and choose another CD to listen to, and by then you've already probably managed the volume. So I was like, what the hell are you talking about? You know, obviously songs within the album have to be consistent, or they have to work album-wise, artistically. But they're like, oh yeah, but from one CD to another, they should be equally as loud. I'm like, no, they shouldn't. You know, they got to pull the CD out and put the CD in. You know, it's already something there's already a disruption. You know. But yeah, I mean, these things, these discussions. Anything that's, you know, anything, it's so easy, right, for people to go to romanticize what they haven't got. Like, do you know what made analog popular, or do you know what made analog cool? Digital.
Yeah.
Digital made analog cool, because when digital wasn't around, and first of all, actually, technically speaking, digital isn't a succession of analog. It was always actually there. It just wasn't cheap enough, you know, for mass use.
Couldn't harness it yet.
Yeah, until, you know, after analog was. But many other things. Digital didn't just change audio. It changed many things around audio and the accessibility, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, forgot my point. But Whereas, oh, I was going somewhere so good with this. Oh, dude, it was good. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But like, you know, it just doesn't matter. You know, what matters is that you're creating music. Oh yeah, you know, some people would just, they want to believe. Yeah, so some people go, oh man, my mixes, man, oh, they're just not translating. I need new speakers. And it's, they always, the blame always goes external first.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
You know, oh man, it's because I'm not using an analog summing mixer. No, it's not. You're just not good.
Yeah.
You're shit.
Or you just haven't trained your ears enough.
Exactly. You're just not good enough yet. Like, when I say that, I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm just saying, look, it's okay. Like, you're not that good yet. You just haven't put the hours in yet. How long have you been doing this? 6 months. Okay, come back to me in 10 years. You know, oh, dude, Gerald, man.
It takes a lifetime to train ears. It takes a lifetime.
And it doesn't end. There's no finish line.
No.
You know? There's just constant development. You just get better and better and better. And guess what? You're going to make a few mistakes along the way. You know? Sometimes I overcook one, Gerald. You know, it happens.
Mm-hmm.
You make mistakes. But you just get better and better and better and better at what you do. But you don't, you know, oh, you know, oh yeah, I haven't got this analog summing desk, and until I get that, my mixes are going to be shit. No, until you get good, your mixes are going to be shit, mate.
How many times have I heard that? If I just got this guitar that I saw down at the store, I know my playing is going to improve. No, it's not.
Exactly.
No, it's not. No.
Exactly. And I'm actually a big, like, because I talk to a lot of people who are still quite new, like, especially people who buy my courses and stuff. Like, they're either hobbyists or they're new, or they're a bit further along than that, but they're not pros, right? In terms of customers or people who I help in my educational department. Mm-hmm. And they're like, should I get this? Should I get that? I'm like, absolutely not. Because I said to them that for fiscal reasons, if you spend $500 on this whole new thing, whether it's new plugins or whatever, how can you possibly value that if you don't know what the alternative is like? If you haven't, you know, trying to think of a good analogy for this. You know, if your first car is a Ferrari, you know, or what? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's hard to go back, but you know.
But also, you can't.
Should have been a Ferrari.
It's not whether it's hard to go back. It's just how can you value that thing fully without having a reference. Mm-hmm. Where's the relativity in all of this? You know, how can you value? Like, I use this EQ, right, called TDR Nova. It's a Swiss Army knife, Gerald. It's in one plugin. It can basically do everything. Like, it's a dynamic EQ, but you can also set it up as like a channel where it's an EQ going into a wideband compressor, or you've got different EQ bands going into compressors, or a compressor, and it's parallel, and it's also expansion, band specific, blah blah blah. But if that was the first plugin that I ever had, I would have zero idea on how to value it, right? I value it now because I've tried so hard and I've learned over time with basic tools like basic EQ, basic compression. So when I have a plugin now that amalgamates all of those things into one, I'm like, wow. And I'm staying up all night reading the manual, Gerald, you know, because I'm like, just
you actually read manuals?
Oh, dude, man, dude.
So do I. Every time I'm on the train, that's all I do is read manuals.
I've got them on here, man.
Yeah.
You know, so when I'm on the tube, like you said, I'm flicking through like instruction manuals. Mm-hmm. because I appreciate the technology. you know, and it's funny for me to even say that because, you know, I'm young enough to, you know, to start doing this in the world where all of this stuff kind of became commoditized, or like a lot of it, you know, got really, really cheap because of digital, because of plugins and stuff like that. It wasn't as good as it is now, but it was ridiculous disruption, you know, compared to 20 years prior to that, you know. But I suppose through my education and everything like that, you know, I value these things, but I'm way beyond making any point at this point. So,
so that's a good segue into ending this then. Yeah,
cool. Yeah, so it's a good question that you brought up. I had no idea that you were going to say that. I literally, that was the last thing I thought that you would come out with.
Well, I knew it was going to lead somewhere. All right, Chris. Until next time.
Until next time, Gerald. Cheers.
Okay.